This
So,
conference will now be recorded.
yeah,
Okay.
perfect. Good. So we'll call this meeting of the Southwest Coastal Citizens Advisory Committee to order on the 14th of April. So we do have a quorum. We have 3 of us on here. So I'm Charles Dice, chairman. I'll let the other 2 of you introduce yourselves.
I'm Margaret Treadwell. I'm a member of the committee.
I'm Todd Lundy. I'm on the committees and also the representative on the county committee, the county-wide committee.
All right, perfect. So Todd, you got anything you want to share about your liaison activity and what the countywide CAC is up to?
Right, I can. The countywide meeting on the March 18th covered goal 5. It was energy sources, and goal 13, energy conservation. And what we do there every time is review all the comments from all of the planning districts and pull together composite ideas and edit whatever the policies are so that they reflect everybody's views. We had a number from Southwest, a number of opinions in that, and that's good to see. So that's about it. That's what we do up there.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. So there's not any summaries or minutes to review since the county is still waiting, I guess, on their transcription service provider. I'm sure once they are available, Ian will send them out. So Julia, if you want to see if there's any public comment or input, that would be great.
Okay, I will invite public comment. I see that we have Guido Paparoni, Pamela Matson McDonald, and caller 1. I don't know who caller 1 is, but Mr. Paparoni or Ms. McDonald, did either of you have any public comment?
Hi, Julia. Thank you very much. No comment at this point.
Thank you. And Ms. Matson McDonald? Okay, I'm not hearing anything. Caller 1, or the only person maybe on the telephone, did you wish to provide comment?
Hi everyone, this is Ian Sisson. I'm calling in because I'm having issues with GoToMeeting on my computer, so I apologize for that. Thank you, Julia, for handling running the meeting in my virtual absence. I am rebooting my computer. Hopefully we'll be able to get on and share video and everything. So in the meantime, Julia, if you don't mind continuing to run things on your end, I'd appreciate it.
Okay, well, I'm going to go ahead and hand it back to Mr. Dice.
All right, thanks. So I'm not aware of any old business, but I'll ask the other committee members if they have anything under old business to talk about. So hearing none, why don't we move on to the review of Goal 8. So as always, Ian or Julia, whoever, sent out the packet this time with the spreadsheets or comment sheets that we have been normally using for these reviews. And as in the past, we'll just kind of march through the various tables and goals and policies for us to review. So if we start with table 1, existing goals, policies, and actions for goal 8, recreational lands, the first thing on table 1 is general policies, and then there's policies 1 through 7, 8. Let's see, 1 through 8, and then it carries on up through policy 12 on the second page. So probably in the interest of time, I'll just, I did go through these and made my comments, so I'll just offer up my comments to start with. And on policy 1 through 7, basically I just agreed with what's already in the table from the Recreational Lands Planning Advisory Committee. So I agree with all their recommendations, but I'll let the other committee members comment on anything in policy 1 through 8.
I agree on policy 1, but I have a comment on policy 2 if we want to close out policy 1. Margaret, what do you think?
Yeah, that works for me.
Okay, great. Okay, on to policy 2.
Now, can you bring policy 2 up, Julia? Can you screen share and show us policy 2?
Actually, I'm not sure that I can, because I'm not the presenter. I don't think I'm the presenter.
Okay, well then I'll just read what I have written down here, and I don't know how it fits in, but it says, add the following. Retain existing public access to county-owned streams, rivers, lakes, and oceans, oceanfront properties identified for public access,
So Todd,
such as, yeah,
Todd, I'm not sure we're on the
Yeah.
same page. At least I'm not.
Should we read the existing policy first?
yeah, that's what we need to do. Let's see if I can get that to be big enough so it's legible.
Yeah, both of
Okay.
them.
So Gail is presenting. So there's existing policies. So there's policy 2.
Yeah, that's what I have for policy 2.
Okay. So the county should, to the extent possible, retain existing county-owned streamfront properties identified in adopted or approved park master plans, the county transportation system plan, or as needed for public access, such as boat ramps, trails, or other recreational needs. Is that the one, Todd?
Yeah, that is the one.
Okay.
I think that what this includes oceanfront property, oceanfront access. I believe this comment may be from Nadia, at least in part. And she's concerned about access to the ocean through public right-of-way that might not, in fact, be developed. So how could we make that?
Where is that a concern?
Well, this is about access, is it not? Transportation, public access to such as boat ramps, trails, and other recreation areas. I think that is what was the concern. The connection there is to streams and the ocean and access to all those kinds of resources.
So the staff recommendation was to retain the policy. The Recreational Lands Planning Advisory Committee suggested replacing stream with waterfront, which would include the ocean. So basically the idea here is the county would retain existing, to the extent practicable, retain existing waterfront property frontage rather than, I guess, selling it off at auction or something. I'm not aware of the county planning to, okay, this is moved to another section. I'm not aware of anything where the county is planning to sell at auction, for example, any kind of waterfront property. But anyway, the policy here is to retain it.
Okay, and that's access to those facilities, to those properties, access to riverfronts, boat ramps, and the ocean. Is that what this is about, or is this something
Well, it's
different?
as identified in adopted and approved park master plans, the county transportation system plan, or as needed for boat ramps, trails, or recreational needs.
I see.
So, I mean, you know,
Okay,
we have the Fort Stevens Park Master Plan, for example, and various different parks, again, through the Recreational Lands Advisory Committee. They basically are the ones who kind of shepherd the county's uh, master parks planning. And then, of course, we've got state parks, which have their own master plans. So, I mean, basically, this just says the county should, to the extent practicable, retain county-owned frontage.
okay. Well, that's good then. Let's leave it as is. And on the next one, policy, does everybody agree then?
Yes.
On policy 3, Nadia suggested that citizen input should be replaced with community input. Now, I'm not sure what her logic was for that. It
Uh,
seems like the same
there's a
thing. Do you know?
there's a thing lately where people feel that a citizen leaves out some people, some communities who might not be citizens, but who live here.
So community outlet would be better. Community input, I mean.
It'd be more inclusive.
Okay.
It seems it seems like a good change to me. I'd be supportive of that. It just includes more people.
Yeah, I'd support that.
Okay.
I'm thinking. Um, I'm thinking as to whether the intent was to have input come from what I would term residents of the county, which is kind of the way I interpret citizen is people that live here, or whether the intent is just to, throw it open to include all of the billions of tourists that come out here.
Well, we could just use resident instead. I think that would achieve the same like inclusion goal.
Yeah, I'd be happy with that.
Hmm.
I'd be kind of unhappy if, 20 buses of tourists were included in whatever the discussion was.
Right. Yeah. I think, yeah, definitely in this area, it's possible for people who don't actually live here to feel that they're part of the community, which is, has pluses and minuses, but I see what you're saying.
Well,
So
we have a conflict there because like it or not, we are a coastal community and we are a community with mountain and river frontage. And we do provide for recreation for others than those that live here. And so I think we do need to keep it open and actually open as much as possible.
I certainly
Yeah.
understand. I certainly understand your point of view and your concern. It's just personally, I would be opposed to opening it up to non-residents. I mean, the residents of the county should be the ones to determine what happens in the county. I don't want to turn that in that decision making or those inputs over to people who don't live here, because I think that's not a good path to go down. So that's my opinion.
Okay.
So Gail had another sort of thought on this in the chat. She said, what about people who own property here but may not live here? Resident would seem to exclude them. What about people who may own a business here but don't reside in the county?
Well, if we can get a word that includes all those folks, I'm happy with it. I just picked on resident because that's what popped into my head, but resident or property owner, I think is fine also with me.
Well,
Like I said, just in viewing what's happening around the country right now, with mobs of rioters taking over cities, I don't know that that's going to happen in Clatsop County. I hope not, but But why invite the opportunity? Why I'd prefer to keep it to residents and property owners.
Well, citizen includes everybody who's a citizen of the United States, I'm sure. So that's very broad.
Well, but
Community,
Todd, I interpreted citizen as citizen of the county. And again, I take your point, and that may be what Margaret was getting at in her initial remarks
Yeah,
about some people being excluded. I didn't interpret it as citizen of the United States. I just said citizen of the county, which to me means resident, but Gail's got a point. I mean, how about property owners? That, yeah, so fine. I'm happy with including property owners or business owners.
well,
Hi,
we could
can
list
everyone hear
all.
me?
Yeah,
Hi,
we
Ian.
can.
Okay, I have a suggestion here. I understand everyone's concerns with this topic. I think community, frankly, is fine and it's inclusive. And generally in community engagement, if you're doing a survey or something like that for community input, you'll ask a screener question at the beginning of the survey and ask if someone's a resident, full-time, part-time, if they're just a visitor to the area and they're interested, and then you can sort and filter all your data that you collect based on the type of community member who submitted that response. So I don't know that we need to spend too much time finding the appropriate word. Personally, I think community is appropriate, but this policy is for the Recreational Lands Advisory Committee to maintain a public forum for input from the community during their processes. So I think at a high level, the most important thing here is that they're collecting input when they're making decisions.
No, that's good, Ian. I move we go with community input.
Okay, I'll second.
That works for me.
All right, great. We're all in agreement. So, any other policies we want to examine on the first page through policy 8?
Can you give me a moment to review them quickly?
Sure.
Thanks. Okay, this all seems good to me.
On policy 6, I had a note that this county recreational lands committee has quite a bit of power. And I wonder if there shouldn't be some kind of constraint on membership. And does anybody know if there is a constraint on membership? Is there anything that could keep one group from dominating the committee by volunteering, sending a lot of volunteers?
Just so that you're aware, the Recreational Lands Advisory Committee is appointed by the Board of County Commissioners.
That takes care of it, I guess. I presume that's good.
Well, but
And they,
I think I like Todd's question. I mean, can you give us some clue as to how many people are on the board, and what kind of people are they? I mean, is it 10 people on the board and 9 of them are from the timber industry, or what is kind of the makeup of the committee?
I don't at this time know who all is on the committee. I think that Lynn Leland is still on there. She's been there for many number of years. And I don't know what the total number should be of the committee. I don't know, for example, if it's a committee with 3 people on it now and it should be 5 or 7. I don't know that without checking their bylaws. So Gail has just put the membership up there, and I do see Lynn is still there. For the record, she is a longtime county resident. I don't know the other folks. So presumably their information is something that's been reviewed by the Board of Commissioners when they made appointments, and there are the bylaws.
Okay.
And I would
Committee.
chime in, add that this is the same kind of process we would use for the Planning Commission or any other appointed committees at the county. Folks who are willing to volunteer will submit an application and state their reason for their interest and their qualifications, and then the board reviews those in a public forum and makes appointments.
Exactly as happened for this CAC, for example.
Yeah. So I'm happy with that.
It's fine.
Okay, leave it be.
All right.
I would be happy. I'd be happier if it had some structure like we do for the what is it, the Timberlands Committee that does all the decisions for the Forestry Act. But there they have a limitation of one from timber industry and one from other groups. It seems to me that would make sense, but it may be that there's so few people volunteer for that committee that they don't have that option. In which case it could be loaded up with people who are, quote, volunteers, end quote, from the timber companies.
Yeah, but I mean, personally, I think that, you know, the commissioners are probably keeping an eye out for that, you know, that kind of skewing that might go on. And, you know, I guess I have confidence they'll do the right thing, which at the end of the day doesn't make any difference anyway, because, you know, they get to do what they want to do. So
Yeah,
I'm happy leaving it the way it is.
Yeah, okay.
As Gail's pointing out, this is really outside our power.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, as citizens or as you know, as voting people in the county, it's not really outside our power. But as members of this committee, it's not something we're making a decision about. So.
Yeah.
I don't see chat, and so I feel like I'm being left out of part of the meeting here. How does that work?
There's a little like cartoon bubble in the top menu on the.
Oh, yeah, I see that.
Click that and it should open up for you. Does that work?
Okay, I got it.
Cool.
Okay, so I think we're in agreement with everything so far, down to 7. Any comments on policy 7?
Yeah, that's fine.
No comment.
Okay, so we're in agreement with that. Then let's go kind of flip over the next page. We've got policy 8 through 12. 8 I'm in agreement with. I did have a comment on policy 9. So
Okay.
policy 9, personally, I think it ought to be updated every 5 years.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Okay. How about you, Margaret? You okay with every 5 years?
Yeah, I think that's good.
Okay. So I guess our committee would say every 5 years. Policy 10, I agreed with. Policy 11, I agreed with, meaning I agreed with the RL PAC to delete the policy. And policy 12, I agreed with the RL PAC comment to reword to clarify the process for non-planners. I'm right there with them. So anybody got any other comments down to 12?
Nope, I agree with all those.
I agree too.
Okay. So Ian, you captured all that, I'm sure.
Yes, I am. I'm typing this down, although you can't see it. I'm keeping track of what you're saying here in the spreadsheet on my computer.
Perfect.
Thanks, Ian.
Okay, so we'll move it on to the next section, which is parks management. And so we've got a objective, 1.1, which it just says retain it. I agree with that. And
I
then
agree.
action one, the first action I also agreed with.
I do as well.
And then action 1.1.2. So this one causes me, again, back to a kind of a generic concern. And my concern is in several of these objectives or policies as we go through all of these, and there are a bunch of them to go through. Several of them talk about marketing or publicity or making things public or whatnot. And I do have a concern about, loving things to death. So certainly there are certain areas and certain parks and recreational areas in the county that are really popular and so popular that the residents of the county can't even get in there because there's no place to park, and it's just overcrowded, period. So I don't know exactly how to balance that idea of spending a lot of county money to put a whole bunch of information up on the internet so the entire world can be enticed to come out to Hug Point, only to find that there's only 22 parking spaces, and and once they're full, everybody else is excluded.
Charles,
So
if I could comment on what you're saying, this policy would apply to county parks. Hug Point is a state park, and so this wouldn't apply. We wouldn't be providing any marketing or information at state parks.
Okay, but I was just using it as an example because I'm not that much familiar with the county parks, but I'm sure there's some park somewhere that's got the same issue that, as an example, Hug Point does with
that might actually reason for this policy recommendation back in 2006 was that there's a lack of knowledge about the county park system. And so, if a resident or a visitor, whoever it may be, visits a county park, they might not be aware of what other parks, especially residents whose dollars go toward maintaining and managing these parks. They might not know the amenities that are available that are maintained by the county. So this would provide that information to them at those parks.
And that might actually lessen the pressure on some of the state parks, theoretically.
Okay, well,
I have a,
I'm okay with going along with it. It's just something that personally is in the back of my mind, and again, I'm maybe there's no park in the entire county that has people that visit it, and that's the issue. On the other hand,
Well,
maybe there are parks that are crowded. I don't know.
No,
it
I think
seems
it's
to me that our role as planning advisors also is to look to the future. And the future is that more and more people will be moving here to our county and be moving to our region. And the pressure on our parks is going to inevitably increase. And as planners, I think we need to look at pushing for more parks and expanded park services rather than closing them down or making them more difficult to use.
Yeah, I'm certainly not suggesting making it more difficult to use. It's just, again, I mean, the internet is so pervasive that, and it's so easy to use that I think there is a tendency to, to want to use it. The problem is once it's out there, you can't control it and you can't target it. So I'm
So
just,
one thing I want to point out about this policy is it's about information displayed at parks, not online. It might reference you to the park's website, but this information recommended in this policy would be displayed at parks. One other point I would make is the issue of overuse and increasing visitorship has definitely been a topic of conversation lately throughout Oregon, throughout the coast especially, and the North Coast. One of the things that I've seen recommended is within that information posted at parks to increase the amount of information about park etiquette, so that folks know where they should be parking, where they should be disposing of litter or recycling, where they should be using the restroom, and things like that, and what fragile natural resources might be present at those parks, to make sure that, with increased visitation, which might be inevitable, that we're not destroying the resources.
Yeah, I would support all that, Ian. I've been, part of those conversations also just because of work. And one other thing I would add to what Ian said is that something that's been discussed a bit is having more information easily available about other parks in the area, so that if one place is overflowing, like the Hug Point example that Charles gave, which I think we probably all saw this last summer, there would be information about other nearby places they could go that might be able to more easily absorb the visitors. Although, on that particular stretch, I can't think of any, but maybe if there's a corollary in the county park system, it could be like a relevant concept, just so that people would know, oh, there's so many people here. Everyone's got a picnic table already. Is there somewhere nearby I could go? Type questions, and just have a sign there available. I mean, I don't really have any
Support.
this one, but just as an idea.
all right, well, so fine, I'll say I agree with the recommendation for 1.1.2. It was just that it brought that thought to mind. And it's something that I may bring up again when we get to something else.
Yeah, I mean, that's
I have a note on that one to incorporate the RL PAC recommendations.
Yeah, and yes, and that's what when I said I agree, I meant I agree with the RL PAC recommendation.
Okay, that's good.
Okay, so moving on to the 1.1.3, any comments on that one? I mean, I agree with the RL PAC recommendation.
I agree.
They should include a statement of what development, the level of development of each park. Will there be toilets? Is it accessible? Those kinds of things should be available.
So are you talking about 1.1.3, Todd?
Yeah, they're maps, area recreational maps and brochures. Certainly brochures for the county park should include information about the facilities, so that people know if they're in a wheelchair that they can use the park, or if they need to use a bathroom, there's a bathroom there that's wheelchair accessible.
Okay, I'm certainly okay with that. Seems to make sense.
Yeah, me too.
All right, I've got that down.
Thank you. 1.1.4. So again, this one I've kind of got the same concept. Personally, I would say add where desirable or warranted in terms of providing more restroom facilities. I wouldn't want somebody to come along 5 years later or 2 years from now and say, oh, well, this means we have to have a restroom in every single county park, no matter what. I think you can take it too far, perhaps. So, where it's warranted and where it's feasible, yeah, great.
I think that we have to add the word accessible restroom facilities somewhere too, because
Yeah,
that's federal law.
that's in the RL PAC recommendation. It says make sure the restrooms are ADA accessible.
Yeah, right.
Right, there you
Okay,
go.
so you agree with the RL pack and that you would add the caveat that they should only be added where necessary and appropriate.
Fine.
Yeah, sounds good.
Yep, sounds good.
So 1.1.5, coordinate with the law enforcement security personnel to share patrolling of the county parks. This may come up later on in somewhere else. I think I remember reading it, but I wouldn't want to limit it again to have people feel like they're limited to law enforcement and security personnel. I mean, personally, the county's got a whole core of volunteer folks. I know certainly I'm a volunteer in the COVID side, and we've gone from like 12 volunteers at the very beginning of the COVID communication center to like 350 now. So that's a big resource. So I would hope that the county would be tapping into that available resource for something like this, where in my mind it's just kind of eyes on the park and making sure nothing untoward is happening. I mean, I'm not talking about asking volunteers to go break up a fight or anything, but I think that's a resource that we don't want to overlook.
How would you incorporate that in this statement, Charles?
Well, I'm looking to Ian he always comes up with planning speak to do this, so I was hoping he was going to chime in.
What I have down so far is consider use of volunteers and something like a neighborhood watch program.
Perfect.
Sounds good to me.
Yeah, that's good.
Actually, I'm accepting the staff recommendation on 6, 7, and 8 if you want to get fast.
Okay, perfect. So am I.
Sounds good. Yep.
All right, so then objective 1.2. Let's see, I agreed with everything on 1.2. So there's three things there. So I agree with all of that. Meaning agree with the RL PAC recommendation.
Yeah, me too. I mean, I can come up with all kinds of ideas of other things, of new things the county could do, but I'll just keep those to myself for now.
Yeah, I agree with that as long as we incorporate the RL PAC suggestions.
Yeah, good.
Yeah.
So objective 1.3, identify additional county-owned land. I certainly agree with the RL PAC recommendation, but it also occurs to me from some of our prior Goal 5 discussions is it'd be really nice to find ways to incentivize developers to donate or set aside land for parks, and maybe that's covered somewhere else, but I'm sure that because it's happened out here in our community in Cove Beach, when somebody wanted to put in a subdivision, he was required to set aside some land. So, hopefully the rest of the county, the planning department would, make sure that there's either a requirement or perhaps just some incentives to get developers when they're going to create a 400 home subdivision to carve out some park space.
Is that 1.3.2 you're talking about there?
No, it's just the objective 1.3. I mean,
Uh-huh.
I'm just saying that objective only talks about additional county-owned land. It doesn't seem to contemplate the possibility that developers could be incentivized to contribute land that could come perhaps into county-owned land, I suppose.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's not, I like that idea too. I'm wondering if there's anything existing in county land use code, is that the word, about that.
So we have cluster developments. So those are a type of subdivision where developers required to reserve 30% of the total land area as common open space. And I think your group, when we were looking at Goal 5 open spaces, recommended a requirement that all subdivisions are done as cluster developments. So all subdivisions would require that 30% common open space. What I would point out about this objective and overall, well, I guess at least for this objective, it's talking about county-owned resources and specifically county-owned land that would be designated as parks, as opposed to a 30% open space, which is available to the public in a subdivision, wouldn't necessarily be a park that's maintained by the county.
Like would it be maintained by the subdivision, like if there's an HOA or something?
Right.
Yeah, and that, I mean, because I can imagine this adding a lot of land to what the county is responsible for, and that the county might not be able to correspondingly increase the number of people working on this.
Yeah, I would say it's pretty unlikely that the county is going to go, maintain playground equipment in every subdivision that has it.
Right.
Okay, well, I'm happy to agree with the RL PAC recommendation for the objective. It's just, as I said, I kind of I would want to retain the concept of incentivizing developers to set aside land for either recreation or parks somewhere. It doesn't have to be this one, but somewhere.
Sure, I've got that down, Charles, and I would say too that just in general provides more options for county residents or visitors to have different places to go that are available to the public that can be used for recreational purposes.
Okay.
It's just different than something that's designated a county park that's managed and maintained by the county.
All right, well, then under the actions, there is 1, 2, 3, 4 actions under this objective, and I agreed with the RL PAC recommendation for all of them.
As did I.
Yeah, me too.
Okay, perfect. So then objective 1.4, provide park facilities that are safe and accessible for their designated use. Not sure who could argue with that, but I agreed with all of the 4 actions that are under that objective as well as the objective.
Yeah, me too.
Gotta make sure I have them. Yep, me too.
Okay.
Oh, aren't there 5?
Yeah, but on this page, I think there's. I was just going kind of page by
Oh,
page.
okay. There are actually 6. Yes.
Okay.
No, 8. No, there's more. Okay, I'm good through 5.
Me too.
Okay, perfect. As am I. So how about 6 then? The implication is somebody's got something to say about 6.
No, I think that I'm covered on that. That's
Oh.
okay.
Yeah, that's fine, but it looks like we've got a little something going on with 8.
Oh, well, okay, so 7 I agree with as well, and so what?
Yep.
Okay, so good, we're all agreed on 7. So what are your comments on 8?
Let me just see. This seems good, rather than just saying that they have to remove underused and derelict facilities, that they would actually figure out why they're underused and if there might actually be a way to have them be used before getting rid of them, which seems like a good idea to me.
I agree.
Yeah, I do too.
Okay.
Okay, good, we're agreed on that. So now we're on to recreational lands, goal 2, funding and operation. And objective 2.1, make the park's operation increasingly self-sustaining, including developing partnerships as possible. So I agreed with that.
Yes, same here.
And
I
basically
I'm
I
on board
agreed with,
all the way down to 2.1.4.
okay, perfect, as am I.
Yep, yep, me too.
All right, good. So objective 2.2, utilize advanced and improved technologies in parks and facilities management to improve efficiencies. I certainly agree with that, and I agreed with all of the actions under that objective down to 2.2.5.
Yeah, on 2.2.1, that includes the RL PAC recommendations, right?
Yes.
Okay, then I'm good with through that, all those as well.
Yeah, me too.
Okay, perfect. So now we're on to recreational lands, goal 3, community health and economic social benefits. So the objective I had agreement with. Action, the first action I had agreement with. The market, this 3.1.2, the second action, again, this brings me back to the comment I made earlier about getting over enthused with the marketing plan and end up crowding out county residents. So, I guess I agree with the recommendation. I just am concerned about being mindful of that as people are putting together their marketing activities.
Yeah, I mean, I'm wondering what the purpose is. Just because, as far as I'm aware, there's not like fees being collected or something that would help maintain the parks, if we were to increase visitorship from like outside areas, outside the county. So while I think like within the county, they could probably be better promoted, whether we want people coming from outside the county, I think would be questionable. I'd agree with you on that, Charles, and just in philosophically.
Nadia asked the question if we have a marketing plan presently for the county parks. Ian, do we?
I am not sure on that one. I'm not sure if Julia knows.
The marketing mostly is done by the chambers of commerce and individual industries. So, honestly, and frankly, the weather stations on most of the electronic news do an excellent job of marketing the county. Frankly, I would look for this to be an extraordinary weekend here based on what I saw on the news last night.
Right.
But the county itself is not involved in a direct marketing strategy. ACFA, I can't remember. There's the Oregon Coast Visitors Association does marketing. Occasionally, what you'll find is the county, does like some sort of an advertising informational piece in one of the marketing brochures or something like that. I'm not aware of anything currently being advertised. But you'll see, for example, the Astoria Wine and Seafood Festival will market in ACFA materials, for example.
Mhm.
I would add just that, you know, to consider that this policy was created with the last update to the Parks Master Plan, which was in 2006. So things with tourism were probably a little bit different then. I personally wasn't here at that time, but, you know, my understanding is generally that tourism has increased quite a bit over the past decade and a half. So the pending Parks Master Plan update, I'm sure this will be looked at closer kind of now through the lens of where we're at with our tourism industry and, you know, where energy should be focused as far as marketing goes, you know, additional marketing is really needed, or if it's going to be more strategic, you know, about getting residents out and active to be healthy versus an economic driver, which, you know, seems like we're pretty good on right now with the levels of tourism we're seeing.
Yeah, thanks, Ian. I appreciate that. And I think that I don't know where it would make the most sense to incorporate, but I think that an emphasis on you know, residents being aware of these parks and recreational opportunities would be more needed, you know, and appropriate than sort of collaborating to present these at like the ACFA level of promotions. It's just like, because, you know, if you think on a summer weekend, oh, where am I going to go outside and enjoy myself, you know, then you're like, oh, I could go to Ecola State Park, but it's going to be so crowded, I can't deal with it. But if you knew more about county parks, you might be more aware of a viable alternative to kind of get your recreation and outdoor time taken care of.
There's the other side
Exactly.
of that coin, and that is that you're bringing visitors into the county, you're bringing money into the county to some extent, so that tourism is a big source of income. I imagine that can't
Yeah,
be ignored.
I totally agree and hear you on that, Todd. But I think as Ian pointed out, I don't think anyone here is saying, oh, we don't have enough tourists.
Yeah, no, and again, you know, I mean, the issue is, and fine, I think I'll just leave it as saying I agree with this. Again, it's just back to that philosophical concern, and it really kind of comes from what's happening in other parts of the country. So I happen to have some pretty close affiliations with the Blue Ridge Parkway and the Blue Ridge Parkway system in North Carolina, and this has become a real big issue back there. And okay, fine, it's a different part of the world and a different, obviously a different county and whatnot, but they are very targeted have become very targeted in how they do their marketing for the Blue Ridge Parkway, because it has gotten so crowded and that the local people are just getting squeezed out, as Margaret just mentioned, on the weekends and things. So they have strategically targeted where they market their information, and it's very, very regional. So they have quit doing broadcasts on the internet, and they've just done very specific marketing pieces in the local, a lot of the local area. So I'm just thinking that to me, that's a smart thing to do. And hopefully there's plenty of smart people on this RL PAC. So as Ian pointed out, I'm sure when they're updating the master plan, they'll take these into consideration.
Yeah, I guess maybe what I would say for this committee, or what I would suggest, is maybe we could include something along the lines of, you know, we would encourage, like, where appropriate, focus on awareness and opportunities for county residents to learn more about the parks and have like those resources geared towards them rather than tourists, which I think, the state parks have pretty well covered.
Yeah, good suggestion.
I'm sure somebody else can make that sound a lot better than I just did, but.
I think I've got that already. I just want to say I think it's a smart recommendation to, basically know the reach of your marketing materials, and if you're going to be marketing to tourists or visitors from outside the area, to make sure that you're really only directing them to facilities that have resources to handle that kind of traffic.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah.
All right. That said, then it sounds like we're in agreement with all 3 items under objective 3.1.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, good. So then we move to goal 4, environmental stewardship. And here I agreed with everything down to the bottom of the page, which was action 4.3.1. And by agree, again, I mean agree with the RL PAC recommendations.
So we're down to, we're down to the end of the page?
Yeah, 4.3.1, wherever that is.
Yeah. Yeah, that's all. I'm in agreement with all that.
Todd?
Wait, let me look. It's jumping around here on me. I'm in agreement on 4.3.1. And I'm okay with 4.3.2.
Oh, all right. We haven't. I'll let me turn the page. Okay, good.
That all seems good to me.
Yeah, so good. So 4.3.3, I defer back to Ian's summation, which I thought was really good, of being anywhere the word marketing or media appears, be mindful of what audience you're trying to attract and the capabilities of the park or facility that you're trying to attract people to. So I like that idea.
Yeah.
You won't like Nadia's suggestion that we add social media to that list.
Well, I don't know what Face Page is, and I wouldn't know where to go find it, so I'm gonna stay out of that one.
Living a blissful, stress-free life, Charles, in that regard. Once it sucks you in, you'll never get out.
Let's leave it as it is.
Okay. All right, so good. We agreed with those 2 at the top of the page. Then we're on the recreational lands, goal 5. Regional recreational connections, which speaks to integration and connection of the system's parks. And objective 5.1 is a permanent recreation council of local, state, federal, and private providers. And then there's a bunch of actions under that objective. And basically, I ended up agreeing with everything that the RL PAC was recommending.
That's all the way through 5.
5.1.6, yeah.
Is there, Nadia asks another question, and Ian, maybe you can answer. Is there an existing trail map for the county? Hiking trail map? Are you there, Ian?
Great. Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, I think I was on mute. I believe, trying to remember if it was in the background materials, there's a brochure that the county has which I believe shows trails. I apologize, I don't remember offhand.
That's
And
okay.
are you
That-
talking about just hiking trails or also water trails?
You know, it was Nadia's question, and I presumed hiking trails. Water trails is a term that seems to be kind of self contradictory.
This is Julia. I'll just hop in for a second. I'm not exactly sure what the county might have specifically through the Parks and Rec of the county's facilities, but the state has a number of brochures that include county trails. So there are a
Great.
lot actually out there. They're not even just ours. The state does a number of brochures, and the Lewis and Clark trail, the Fort to Sea trail, is highly promoted.
Yeah, so I
Okay.
just Googled it and it shows up on the Clatsop County website, and it says it's a Northwest Coast Trail Map and Guide to Clatsop
There you
County,
go.
Oregon.
Oh, thank you very much. That's
Yeah.
good. I'll just pass that on to her.
Yeah, and I wanted to weigh in on the water trails concept. And I'm certainly no expert, but my understanding is it's like a route on which you might want to take your kayak or something or other small recreational vessel and visit sort of a series of locations. There's one in Tillamook County in various parts of the estuary.
Okay. So
Exactly,
they have
and the most part of that is so folks know where they can put in and take out their boats.
That's a good point.
that's it. I see. Very good. Very good. Well,
Oh,
otherwise I'm good with all of these.
okay. I did notice one typo on action 5.1.5 where it says trials instead of trails.
Thank
We
you.
don't want anyone to misunderstand that.
Yeah, good eye, good eye.
Yeah, I saw that as well.
All right, so it sounds like we're all in agreement on all the actions associated with Objective 5.1.
Yeah.
All right, so now we get to go to the Southwest Coastal Community Plan and talk about more specific things. So the first is coastal and stream shoreland policies, policy 9, emergency vehicles. I agreed with that.
Yes, me too.
Me too.
And then recommendation 1. So again, I have a caution in my brain on this one. So for instance, down in our neck of the woods, Cove Beach, as well as up around, I'm trying to think of the name of the development. I think it's North Cross or Norcross development up near Hug Point. In both of those areas, the terrain is really along bluffs that abut the ocean shore, and some of the platted streets end in one of those bluffs. So in areas like that where it's really, quite frankly, very dangerous and difficult to get down to the beach because of the bluff and the steepness and all of the cobbles. I wouldn't want people to feel like they needed to encourage or spend money on putting in ramps or steps or anything. It just seems counterintuitive to public health and safety. So in my eyes, it is definitely a safety issue. Again, in both areas, we have had numerous emergency calls, 911 calls over the last 20 years for people that trip and fall and break something. And tragically here at Cove Beach, we had 2 kids that died in 2020. So I think, I think this needs to be tempered a little bit again by saying where feasible or where warranted.
Mhm.
Okay. What I wrote down, if this sounds good, is avoid creating or improving access points in fragile, steep, or hazardous areas.
Great.
Sounds good to me.
I
Yeah.
like that. Yeah.
I agree. All right, so, and then recommendation 2, I agreed with that, no horse traffic, that kind of makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So we're all agreed on that. So now we're on to public facilities, policy 4. And seems like we talked about this conceptually anyway. We talked about this before on one of the goal 5 things. And I'm certainly in favor of this, but I'd certainly like to include platted streets if that's not already. I mean, in my mind, when people say right away, in my mind that is a platted street. But if there is something, if there's a reason to differentiate it, I'd like to certainly include platted streets in that, so that we don't just vacate platted streets without consideration of designating them as a public resource, because they were created as a public resource.
Yeah, that's a good point, Charles. And besides, it says highway right of way. So I think we should add after that comma, platted streets, comma. It should be
So
reserved.
there's 2 policies here with regard to recreational uses within rights of way. The one that comes up first is under public facilities, which involves utility rights of way, and then the next one under transportation would involve road rights of way.
Oh, okay. Thanks, Ian. But
So
wouldn't public facilities also, wouldn't we need to take the same attitude about street right of ways or street dedicated streets?
I think it's covered under transportation, but if you wanted
Okay.
to add policy under public facilities, you could do that.
I think it would make it more inclusive.
yeah, so do I. All right, so with that addition, then I think policy 4 under public facilities and policy 3 under transportation look fine to me. So is everybody in agreement with policy 4 and policy 3 as we modified it?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, good. So then we're on the open space, historic, recreation, scenic, and natural areas goal. The goal, I guess I agree with the goal, and I think we already, as Ian already noted in the comments, I think we already agreed with this while we were talking about goal
Yeah.
5.
Yep. Fine
And
with me.
then on the next page, the 2 actions associated with it, 4.3.2 and .3, I had agreement with that, again, with the same reservation whenever I see the word media or newsletters or other things that we've already talked about.
On 3, Ian, tell me what is Citizens Advisory Committee sounds like language from ancient history, since we don't have one anymore in Arch Cape. What is the relevance of that?
I believe you're correct, Todd, that was probably written at the time there was an active CAC.
So then who should be reviewing it? Is there anticipation of renewing, of reviving these citizens advisory committees?
Well, I hope so. We certainly made that recommendation back when we were talking about goal 1.
Yes.
So exactly. So goal 1, a draft of goal 1 has been created, and at some point in time it will be evaluated and then eventually adopted. And so I don't know yet what's going to come out of that. I can't predict that, and won't be making those decisions. It'll be the Planning Commission and the Board of Commissioners. So I think what we've done with other policies that reference the Citizen Advisory Committee is that we kind of make a recommendation to insert appropriate language based on whatever comes out of the Goal 1 update.
Okay. Good enough for me.
All right. Something happened to my screen. Are we all still here?
Yeah,
Yep.
I'm here.
Okay. Yeah, good. All right. So then we're on to the next page where I think we're talking about Southwest Coastal Goals and Policies, Policy 1 through 6. I was okay with everything down to Policy 6, with the possible exception of on Policy 4, it kind of singles out Leach Avenue, which I certainly agree with along Leach Avenue. But maybe adding Shingle Mill. I mean, Shingle Mill to get to the Oregon Coast Trail, you have to go down Leach and hang a left and then go down Shingle Mill for a quarter mile or so until the trail heads off through the woods as part of the Oregon Coast Trail. So, if we're going to talk about Leach, I don't know why we wouldn't talk about Shingle Mill as well.
Yeah, no, it should be. That or delete the reference to Leach altogether.
Or make it along existing streets or something so that it's not exclusive. I mean, I would want to include any of the existing streets that you are forced to take to make the connection back to the Oregon Coast Trail. Any comments, Ian?
No, I don't know why Leach Avenue or Leach Lane was singled out here. It may have been an issue at the time the policy was created. So if you wanted to strike Leach Avenue and just make it a universal policy, I think that would be fine.
Okay, works for me.
Yeah, it's good for me.
Works for me.
All right, so then we're down to the last one, which is Conservation Other Resources Policies, Objective 2, develop low-intensity uses, and I agreed with the staff recommendation to retain the policy.
Yeah, me too.
Wait, where are we? We're on the policy.
On the very last item on this page, on Table 2, very last item in Table 2, Conservation Other Resources Policies, and then under that there's Objective 2, where it says to develop for low-intensity uses which do not substantially degrade That's the
I
one we're
have a
talking.
note that it says that, that my note says that delete the 2. Where is that? Where would that make sense? To develop low. Oh, that's an objective to deload. I see. Okay, never mind.
So
It's
you're in
just
a,
a sentence. Turns it into kind of a sentence fragment if you say just to develop low intensity uses. The policy is to, or the objective is to develop. I see that. It all makes sense. Just grammatically kind of strange. I'm good
so
with
then
it,
we're all in
Leslie.
agreement that that's okay?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. All right, so now we're on to the new issues and policies worksheet, where we come up with some new ideas, if we wish to. And the first item is population changes, demographics, climate migration. And Ian suggested we need to address how this affects recreational needs. And my thought here is to prioritize parks and recreational areas outside of the floodplain or the tsunami zone. Again, with, back to my constant fear of the media and the newsletters and advertising, that we certainly wouldn't want to spend a whole lot of money advertising things that are in the floodplain and the tsunami zone. I wouldn't think.
Well, we definitely wouldn't want to spend a lot of money on facilities, or particularly new facilities in those areas, for sure.
Right. My take on this is that because of the increase in population that we mentioned earlier, we need to focus on developing new parks, maybe new campgrounds in the forest areas of our county. I know the timber companies will object to that, saying that's private land, but the county has eminent domain if they want it. And if we were to identify particular streams or meadows or places that are particularly beautiful, it would be a way to offset some of the pressure here along the coast. And it would also offer a lot more recreational facilities for people generally in the northwest part of the state.
Hi, this is Julia. I just wanted to chime in really quickly and make sure that you guys understand that it probably is not going to be in the political will to use eminent domain to take forest land and convert it to a park system. The county, um, that probably is not going to be something that would be something the Board of Commissioners would decide to do. That just beyond the financial aspect of it, it is not politically sound.
Okay,
If I
thanks,
could,
Julie.
campgrounds are actually pretty high intensity in terms of recreational uses. The last policy we just looked at in the Southwest Coastal Community Plan was with regard to forest land, and the objective was to develop for low intensity uses which do not substantially degrade the existing character and so on and so forth. And campgrounds are really pretty intensive. The development of campgrounds is regulated mainly by the state, and the level of resources and development associated with meeting those requirements is really kind of surprising. And so, it's not really like a primitive campground. It would be paved roads and restrooms and things like that, water. So you have to think about the impact of putting that in forest land, and then in addition to that, the increased wildfire risk posed by people being irresponsible with fire.
Okay.
And also the many of the timber companies, I know Lewis and Clark Timberlands for sure, which is a huge private landowner in the county. allows recreational access to all or almost all of their land. You just go online and download a permit. It's just for day use. It's not for overnight, but you can go walk the roads and walk the trails on their forest land. So that is available for people already.
Which company is that?
Lewis and Clark Timberlands.
Okay, thank you.
And I think the website is maybe Greenwood Resources. It's a company of theirs. So I can't remember
Thanks.
if the web is Clark Timberlands or if it's Greenwood Resources where you go get the permit. But I actually just looked at that last week and it processed, and the permit's good for the whole year.
Thanks, Ian.
All right, so again, my interpretation here is that Ian or whoever, or Gail, maybe whoever put this together, is kind of encouraging us to consider climate migration or climate change with respect to the recreational needs. And like I said, the only thing I could come up with is prioritizing parks and rec areas outside of the floodplain of the tsunami zone. Any of the rest of the committee members have?
Yes. What this makes me think of is that we might be losing some of our recreational areas to climate change and migration of due to sea level rise. So, you know, areas that are adjacent to the ocean, and then how that, you know, impacts upstream, estuary areas, creeks, etc. And if we want to consider something, a suggestion along the lines of, as this occurs, or as this is sort of predicted to occur, because there are maps available now that could show us what is predicted in various scenarios, do we want to prioritize retaining the overall acreage that is available, you know, so offsetting that with other areas that might provide the same benefits as things kind of move uphill as possible, or also just further up as upland, which others have also sort of mentioned here and there. Does that make any sense?
Yes.
Yeah, it
No,
does.
makes a lot of sense.
Okay.
I see that as a similar problem with having parks or camping grounds or whatever. We are aspirational, and it's not up to us to try to judge whether this or any future board would approve usurping timberland. I think that as an objective, we can put in what we think is right for the future. That's what we're assigned to do, and not try to second guess the political environments that might exist in the future. So I would like to see that what you just suggested be part of our plan, and also I would like to see parks and campground development be part of our plan.
Mhm.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Do you know how to capture that, Ian?
I think so. There's a couple points I wanted to clarify. So when I think about population changes and demographics, thinking about increased numbers of full-time residents, and then also culturally different residents who might have different recreational needs, or aging residents who might have mobility issues. And so looking at how do we accommodate an aging population, or how do we accommodate an increasing Latinx population, to make sure that the cross section of the community, their needs are being met. And when I think about climate migration, I think about sea level rise, sure, because people are going to have to move away from those areas. Extreme heat and drought, people are also going to have to move away from areas experiencing those issues. And frankly, Clatsop County is probably pretty desirable. Oregon and the Northwest in general is a desirable place for people trying to escape extreme heat and extreme fire to migrate to and live in. So, you know, increasing population, different groups of people being represented, and planning to accommodate those changes.
Mhm. All really good
Yeah,
points.
right. Yeah. I don't know that as for special populations like the Latinx people, we don't have the qualifications to try to judge what that might require.
I think earlier, I mean, just to kind of for the low hanging fruit, like earlier in the policies we were looking through, there were some additions of having materials and signs available in Spanish or other languages as needed. But I have learned a little bit about this, and I would suggest maybe, you know, collaborating with, there are existing community groups and nonprofit organizations, at least like for the Western United States, that work on these issues, like how like the Latinx population, how African Americans experience and what they prioritize about spending time in the outdoors and recreationally. And I would suggest maybe the county work with them a little bit to just kind of figure out what deficiencies the county might have in that regard that we're just not aware of.
Perhaps they could put on one of these seminars that you guys are so good to offer.
I know your seminars are great. There's a thing called Latino Outdoors that has a chapter in Portland that could maybe present. It's a nonprofit that was started in California, but it has a presence in Portland and in Bend, I believe. So.
Yeah, that's a great idea. I will put that down to collaborate with community groups that are versed in those topics. Also, again, as a reminder, the policies contained in our Goal 8 come directly from the Parks and Recreation Master Plan, which again will be updated in the next 1 or 2 years.
Oh.
Part of that process, this will definitely be something that is evaluated. And one of the things that's actually required is that we refer to the State Comprehensive Outdoor Recreation Plan, or SCORP, which is updated on a regular basis and incorporates a lot of really good up-to-date demographic information, not only on changes in population, but also on the needs and the desires of different population groups. So that will get baked into that plan update as well.
Good.
Excellent.
Yeah. All right, so that brings us to the next item, which again was a suggestion to consider, at least the way I interpret it, the impact of smoke and wildfires, probably associated with the climate change or migration. And I drew a blank on anything specific to come up with myself. So if anybody has, you know, anything specific they want to chime in with, great.
It feels really overwhelming.
Well, one thing that struck me was that the county could promote fire breaks around the potable water resources for our various communities. I don't know just how that would be done. I'm not a technician in forestry, but it would seem that it could be possible to protect those watersheds from forest fire if in advance of forest fire. I'm not talking about doing it during forest fire, as one of these things said, but in advance of it, having clear cuts programmed in such a way that they would provide fire breaks is one of my favorite options. So if there was some way to incorporate that, I would suggest that be done.
I like
Yeah,
that. I also
second,
like, yeah. I also like your bringing in sort of the critical infrastructure, Todd.
Right.
Yeah, I know during last, what was that, September or early October, when we were having, luckily Clatsop County was spared any wildfires, but we had the east winds and the dry air, and it made me, as a former Californian, made me very nervous. And my house is maybe 3 blocks from the forest, which is to the east. So I was like, oh no. Anyway, and I just think, it's not something, as far as I know, it's not something we've really had to think too much about here. But maybe starting to look at some of the practices from other areas that have been living with wildfire a little bit longer, to protect the critical infrastructure would be really a good thing to incorporate on our county-owned lands.
But it also, what you mentioned, is a planning issue, and we could think about the kind of boundaries around our residential areas and not allowing residential areas out into the forests, or limiting it, being very restrictive about what people can do in the forest. Because these, as we all know, create dangerous situations for the firefighters, and as well as the loss of property, tax base, everything else in the county. So it's a very important resource to protect. And the fact that we're in the western part of the state and in the Coast Range doesn't protect us.
So in the scope of like recreational needs, how do we make
that's
question, I mean, all this is of course hugely important beyond that, but in terms of what we're talking about.
That's a good point. We're talking about,
Hi, this is Julia. I was just going to ask if you wanted to think about some sort of suggesting some sort of an outreach program that is maybe very visible to visitors, to let them know about what the fire danger is when they're in a specific area, so that they understand that we are not going to be having beach fires, and we're not going to be allowing certain types of recreation in certain types of places. I know that on Highway 30, there is a sign that, and of course a lot of people come in Highway 30, but there is a sign in the John Day area next to one of the fire substations, and it is changed to reflect pretty much daily what the fire danger is in the county. And I don't know how much good that does, but I always look at it on my way back and forth. But I mean, maybe that kind of just something that lets people kind of reflect on what they're going into, and to remind them that, you're not going to be having an open fire someplace, or that we are in a time of extreme danger because it's the end of August or something like that. Is just a suggestion.
There's one on 26 as well, is there not?
I don't travel 26 very much. I travel Highway 30.
I don't remember one, but I really like the idea, because I'm kind of reminded that, whenever I drive up to, Sisters, going through, of course, Detroit, and some of those places that aren't there anymore, there's a whole proliferation of those what I call Smokey Bear signs that say, high danger or low danger or whatever of burn season. But the notion of, I mean, there's only what, 3 or 4 primary roads into Clatsop County, 30, 26, and 101. So if the county had, a nice sign up at each of those roads as it comes into the county, saying, burn ban in effect, or burn danger is high, or, look out for landslides or something like that. I think that would be a really useful thing to do.
Yeah, I like that idea. I find those signs eye-catching. You know, I was just last week I was down on the south coast, and on the way back noticed quite a few like in the further south coastal areas of Oregon, and so it seems a natural thing that it would start to, you know, migrate north as a priority sign to have.
The thing that makes those signs that have the arrows on them really effective is that we, as the public, see them as something that's current, and so we pay more attention to them. That means that there needs to be somebody out there every day or every week anyway, adjusting the arrow. We need that gets complicated. Maybe the police could do that. As they drive by, they stop and crank the arrow up to an appropriate point. But we are making a burden on the operating system of the county when we put in those signs. But I agree that, especially at the access points to the entry points to the county, something saying we take this seriously, and that would be really good to have. That's good, Julia. Thank you for that.
Well, you're welcome. And the other thing I guess I would say is, you know, ODOT has reader boards that they put messages on, and they change those. That's by computer. And the volunteer fire departments, I mean, the one that I'm passing every day is changed by folks who are firefighters who are, you know, just going to that particular office on a regular basis and just going out and changing the sign. So, I mean, depending upon where you place these, it probably isn't a huge burden to the people who are taking care of them. And the other thing I'm thinking about is if there's a county park facility where some sort of signage is located, the people who operate the park, who take care of the park, could change it. It's anyway, just an idea.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we all like the idea. So we'd like to incorporate that suggestion. And again, I'm sure Ian has got a clever way to phrase this.
Yeah, I've got it. Electronic marquees also popped into my mind.
Yeah.
I put down to coordinate or collaborate with the State Highway Division because, you know, those main roads obviously are managed by ODOT, so there'd have to be some kind of action by them. And then the other thing that popped into my mind as everyone was discussing that was, and this would be more for locals rather than visitors, but we have the Clatsop Alerts text system. I don't know if any are getting the code alerts, but you know, probably they could incorporate alerts for dangerous fire conditions in that system as well. That's through our emergency management department.
Yeah, I agree. That's a good idea.
Can you get that all in there, Ian?
Yeah, I've got it.
Okay,
Okay.
perfect. So then the last suggestion was that the master plan is out of date, 15 years old. And then there's an RL PAC recommendation to update the master plan. And I'd kind of suggest we refine that to say like every 5 years seems like a good time to, there's so much that changes nowadays. In 5 years, I would feel comfortable with 5 years.
How does that affect staffing? Yeah.
Yeah, how long is that process to update the master plan? How big of a deal is that? I think Todd and I are asking the same thing.
Yeah, we are.
Yeah.
I don't know. Presumably, each time it's updated, you know, if it's a more regular interval, each update requires less work. So this next upcoming update will probably require a lot of work because it's been 15 years. But you know, every 5 years after that, it's probably not going to be as heavy of a lift, as the information will be more current every time. But I think it's probably a process that will be led by our parks division. I'm sure that community development will be involved, but I don't know that we would be the department spearheading that project.
Well, then I think that that's even more testimony to the fact that we should change it to 5 years.
Yeah, I agree. You know, they can always overrule us, which they probably will anyway, but at least,
Yeah.
you know, we've made a recommendation, which is what we're supposed to do.
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
All right, I've got it down.
Perfect. All right, so that covers everything we needed to cover today.
Charles, I know Margaret had mentioned she might have some recommendations in this table as far as noxious weed control and herbicide use and things like that.
Did I?
Okay, perfect.
I think that was the topic
Go,
I
Margaret.
heard you had a lot of opinions on, but you were going to hold them until later.
When was this?
It's okay if you didn't have any additional recommendations for this table, that's fine. I just wanted to make sure that we got any others that folks might have for new suggested.
Oh, okay. Well, I
Although-
remember earlier
although-
there
go ahead.
was an item that did talk about like noxious weeds or invasive plants, I believe, and I remember thinking that it seemed good.
Okay.
So sorry.
I mean, you know, now that Ian says those words, noxious weeds, I mean, the whole concept of doing whatever we can do as a county to eliminate or minimize noxious weeds in the county park system seems like a really good objective. If it isn't covered by what we've already said and looked at, it would seem like a really good objective.
Yeah, it is in there. I think what I maybe had just assumed was that there was some additional input with regard to like the use of herbicides to accomplish that mission.
Oh, yeah. Well, do you remember where that is? Like which action that is?
I'm looking for it.
Yeah, I don't even remember seeing the word noxious weed in here. But
There we go. Action 1.2.2, implement a noxious weed control program.
yep, there we go.
You can maybe add something about like consulting with fill in the blank on like the most environmentally friendly way to I was going to say eradicate, but I feel like that's too strong of a word, but you know, to reduce the amount of noxious weeds and invasive plants in county recreational lands, and to do it like in the least detrimental way, i.e. using as few herbicides as possible. I mean, I know that like the Watershed Council and North Coast Land Conservancy, they'll do like community work parties to pull the invasive plants and dispose of them in a way that doesn't, you know, propagate them through seed dispersal. And so maybe collaborating on that kind of an approach with either of those organizations, or maybe also, well, I was gonna say maybe CREST, but I can't remember if they do like vegetation.
Or voluntary community groups like, you know, the community club down here periodically does one of those yellow flower things that everybody tries to get rid of.
Scotch broom.
Yeah, Scotch broom. Does a Scotch broom purge. So yeah, I like the idea of using the local community groups, whatever they may be, to get rid of that stuff instead of spraying it.
You could even have like a limited contract with one of those groups, like to get at least one person who is you know, who does it on a professional basis to kind of supervise and manage these types of work parties, or to at least provide the correct information on practices, just rather than using herbicides.
Okay.
Something along those lines.
Yeah, so I assume you'll.
Are there new recommendations for table 3, or were we done with that one?
I have.
Go ahead, Todd.
We talked about this earlier, but I'd like to make it as an aspirational goal, and it would go something like this: the Clatsop Recreational Lands Committee shall be comprised of no fewer than 5 members, no one of which may have significant connection to timber interests or real estate development interests or conservation organization, a conservation organization.
Who's left?
Good luck, did you say?
Well, he said no more than one, so there's room
Well,
for one.
I see. Okay, sorry, I missed that detail.
So that I think that if it were in the plan, then the county board would be more aware of this concern than if it were just thrown open. Board of Commissioners.
Yeah, I can't argue with the objective. I mean, clearly it's at the end of the day, it's going to be up to commissioners, but at least having our input that it's important to us in the community that they consider this, I think is certainly a worthwhile addition.
Ian, you're silent.
Sorry,
He's
I'm
writing
typing.
furiously. He's writing furiously.
Do you want me to read that again, or did you get the essence of it?
I think I got the essence of it. What were the industry groups that you were hoping to limit again?
Connection to timber interests, real estate development interests, and to be fair, although my bias would be you could load it up with conservation people, to be fair, you probably ought to say something about conservation interests as well.
Okay. Yep, I've got all that. Thanks, Todd.
Okay.
So any other new ideas that we want to bring to the table, or are we done?
I think you did a magnificent job here, Charles.
Me too.
Thanks.
And everybody, we all did this. I didn't think this was going to be possible to get done with this today.
Well, I'm glad we did. So we've got a few minutes left. That's just enough time, I think, to turn it back to Ian for public comment and input.
Yeah, I can't actually see the attendee list. So Julia, if you don't mind doing the rounds, I would appreciate it.
Certainly. I was going to check on Mr. Paparoni.
Yes, thank you, Julia, and members of the team as well. Ian, thank you as well. Very good job today, by the way. I do have, as a member of the public, I listened to the meeting today. I guess I'm asking from you some level of reassurance that Clatsop County is actually welcoming to outsiders. There were a lot of comments made today that sort of almost presented a division between the people that are there and the people that are coming in. In particular, I heard a couple of things about being a citizen or not being a citizen, or whether that had to do with being essentially a resident of the area. So again, I would like some reassurance that it isn't written somewhere that in order to live in Cove Beach or in Arch Cape or anywhere else in Clatsop County, that you have to be born there to be able to live there. As a matter of fact, there's a very simple test here. How many members of the committee today were actually born where they live today? So it's important to be inclusive. I mean, we're talking about recreation here, people coming to the state. Whether they're in-state, out-state, in this county, outside the county, they're coming to recreate. That's a good thing for us, isn't it? Doesn't that bring money to us? Doesn't that allow people to be human beings? So let's be inclusive. I mean, again, correct me if I'm wrong, but as a citizen of the US, you can choose where to transit, where to recreate, and where to purchase property. We all do it. We're not born where we live today. So please keep that in mind. Thank you very much.
That's a great statement. Guido. You hit it on the head, and you said it very eloquently.
Thank you, Todd.
Okay, thank you. And Pamela Matson McDonald, did you have anything that you wish to add today?
Actually, I thought it went really well. I don't have anything to add. I really like this committee. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Pamela.
Okay, Mr. Dice, we're back to you. Charles, you're on mute.
Yeah, my phone was ringing. With that, I would propose that we adjourn unless anybody has any final comments they want to add.
No,
Hearing,
I
all
second.
right, all right, I got a motion and a second. Everybody in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All right, perfect. I
Thank
hope
you all.
everybody goes out and enjoys the sunshine and the warm weather today.
Yeah, I do too.